My husband threw his leather briefcase onto our marble floor and told me I had 90 days to become useful, or he was done being married to me. I was standing in the sunroom, trimming white hydrangeas beside the windows that overlooked the back lawn of our Greenwich estate. The glass walls caught the late afternoon light, turning the room golden soft, as if the house itself wanted to pretend nothing ugly could happen inside it. But ugly had a key. Blake Whitmore stormed in wearing a navy suit, loosened tie, and the kind of expression he saved for junior employees who failed to impress him. He smelled like bourbon and expensive cologne. It was 3:17 on a Tuesday. "Did you hear me, Eleanor?" I set the pruning shears down carefully. I heard the briefcase. "Don't be cute." I wasn't trying to be. He looked around the sunroom like the flowers had personally offended him. White hydrangeas, peonies, gardenias, cut glass vases lined along a reclaimed oak table. I had arranged them that morning because we were hosting a dinner on Friday. Blake loved those dinners. He loved watching men from Manhattan stand beneath our chandeliers and assume he was the reason everything around them glittered. He was not. He only believed he was. "I had lunch with Charles and Everett today," Blake said. "Do you know what their wives are doing?" "I imagine you're going to tell me." Charles's wife just opened her second medical clinic. Everett's wife is on the board of a museum. And when they asked what you do, I had to sit there like an idiot. I looked at him for a long second. "You told them I manage the house." Blake laughed, short and sharp. "Manage the house? Eleanor, you order flowers. You choose napkin rings. You smile at people I bring here. That is not managing anything. That is decorating." Decorating. The word landed gently, almost politely, and still cut through me like a blade. This house had 14 rooms, 5 fireplaces, a wine cellar, a pool house, a library with first editions, a greenhouse, a 6-car garage, and a private dock on the lake. I bought it 4 years before I married Blake. I bought it through a trust, like I bought the apartment in Tribeca he used for late meetings, the Aston Martin he drove to impress clients, the club membership he treated like a birthright, and the watches he wore while telling other men hard work had made him rich. Blake believed his partnership at Hargrove and Wells, a boutique consulting firm in Manhattan, paid for our life. He believed I was the quiet, tasteful wife who came from some old family money that had mostly faded away, a woman who brought a pretty name and not much else. He did not know that the 3 largest clients keeping his firm alive belonged indirectly to me. He did not know that I was the founder and chairwoman of Whitestone Meridian, a renewable energy and infrastructure conglomerate valued at billions, with solar projects in Arizona, offshore wind investments in New Jersey, battery technology in Texas, and clean grid software licensed across 22 countries. He did not know I had spent 18 years building an empire behind trusts, initials, shell companies, and board representatives because I wanted one place in my life where I could be beloved without being worshipped, chased, calculated, or used. I wanted my marriage to be that place. Instead, my husband stood in my sunroom and called me furniture. "I need a wife on my level," Blake said. "Not someone floating through life in a bubble I built." I almost smiled. It would have been cruel to both of us. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" That threw him off. He had prepared for tears. Maybe anger. Maybe pleading. My calmness irritated him. "I'm asking you to get a job. A job. A real job. Not a charity committee, not some flower class. Not brunches with women who pretend fundraising is work. I mean a salary, a schedule, responsibilities. Something I can actually mention without being embarrassed. And if I don't?" His jaw tightened with satisfaction. This was the part he had rehearsed. "Then we need to reconsider the marriage." The hydrangeas on the table looked impossibly clean. "How long do I have?" 90 days. "And what counts as acceptable?" He leaned back, as if he were generously lowering the bar for me. "I'd say $100,000 a year, minimum. That's not impressive in our circle, but it would show effort. It would show you can contribute something beyond looking good in silk." Contribute. I had once approved a $1.40 billion acquisition while running a fever in a hotel room in Singapore. I had negotiated with governors, union leaders, engineers, venture funds, and federal regulators who smiled at me like a daughter until I made them read the second page of the contract. I had saved entire projects from collapse with one phone call. And my husband was offering meth chance to be worth $100,000. "I'll start tomorrow," I said. Blake blinked. "Tomorrow? You said 90 days. I should not waste time." For the first time that afternoon, he seemed pleased, not proud. Pleased. Like a man watching a dog sit on command. "Good. I'm glad you're taking this seriously." "I am." "Friday, the Carsons are coming to dinner," he said. "Don't make it weird. Daniel Carson ice important." I turned back toward the flowers so he would not see my face. "Daniel Carson. Daniel Carson was the founder of Carson Grid Systems, a battery storage company Whitestone Meridian had been quietly trying to acquire for 8 months. Blake had invited him to our house believing was bringing a major industry figure into his world. What he didn't know was that Daniel had been begging for a meeting with me since February. Blake continued, he's an energy, I think. Some battery thing. Hargrove is trying to get closer to that sector. If I handle the dinner right, it could be huge for the firm. Yes, I said softly. Huge. Blake glanced down at his phone and smiled. Not at me. At the screen. Then hit the phone face down too quickly. I'm going upstairs, he said. Try not to overthink this. I'm actually helping you. He left me with the flowers and the briefcase still lying open in the hallway like a dead animal. I waited until I heard the gym door close upstairs. Then I walked to the old writing desk in the corner of the sunroom, unlocked the hidden drawer, and took out my second phone. My real phone. There were 5 messages waiting. From Nadia Cole, my chief operating officer, board meeting Thursday. Carson acquisition ready. Only needs your approval. From Martin Vale, my attorney, post-nup draft finalized. If Blake asks for divorce first, he traps himself. From Simone Patel, head of strategic risk, we verified Hargrove's dependency. Losing Whitestone-affiliated accounts would cut 61% of their annual revenue. And from Leo Grant, my private security lead, we found the woman. Her name is Madison Pierce. Marketing director at Hargrove. This is not casual. I sat down slowly. For a moment, the humiliation in the sunroom became small. Then it became useful. I called Leo first. Tell me everything. His voice came through steady and low. They've been involved for 8 months. Hotel stays in Midtown. Weekend trips to Napa and Miami. He has been using the Tribeca apartment twice a week. She believes he owns it. Of course she does. There's more. He met with a divorce attorney 2 weeks ago. He told the attorney you are financially dependent and emotionally unstable. The sunroom seemed to tilt around me. He said what? That he has supported you for years, that you spend recklessly, and that you refuse to work. He asked whether that could affect settlement optics. I stared at the white hydrangeas. Perfect, expensive, cut. He's building a story. Yes. The 90 days weren't to help me. No. They were to create evidence. Leo did not answer. He did not need to. Blake was not just tired of me. He was preparing to discard me and make himself the victim. The hardworking husband. The exhausted provider. The man who tried to motivate his spoiled wife before finally walking away. I looked toward the staircase where he had disappeared. For 6 years, I had made myself small inside a house I owned, beside a man whose career breathed because my companies fed it. I had softened my opinions, hidden my calls, changed out of suits before he came home, pretended not to understand conversations that I could have ended with 2 sentences. I had done all of it for love. Or maybe for the experiment of love. Now the experiment was over. I called Nadia. She picked up on the first ring. Tell me you're not about to cancel the Carson dinner. No, I said. I'm about to make it unforgettable. A pause. Oh no. I need an interview set up tomorrow morning at Whitestone Meridian. For whom? For me. Another pause, longer this time. Eleanor. I'm applying as a normal candidate. You are applying to your own company? My husband told me to get a job. Nadia laughed once, then caught herself. I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I know. What position? Something junior. Visible enough that Blake can brag he fixed me. Low enough that his ego relaxes. Analyst. Perfect. Under what name? Eleanor Hayes. My maiden name. The one I had buried under marriage, under silence, under silk dresses and polite dinners. Nadia exhaled. You understand everyone on the executive floor will lose their minds. They can lose them quietly. And the board? Thursday. I'll reveal myself in person. Finally. The word carried years of frustration. Most of my board had never seen me outside secure video, encrypted calls, and initials, E.H.W, founder. Few knew my face. The public knew almost nothing. Privacy had once protected me. Then it had turned into a cage. Nadia, I said, prepare the Carson documents for Friday night. At your home? At my home. With Blake there? With Blake at the table. She was silent, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. Are you sure? I looked at the briefcase on the floor. Then at the flowers. Then at the reflection of myself in the glass wall, 42 years old, calm face, pearl earrings, hair swept neatly back, hands that had built companies and poured wine for men who ignored me. No, I said. I'm not sure. I'm done. The next morning, I made Blake coffee with oat milk and 1 sugar, just the way he liked it. Not because he deserved kindness, but because routine is useful when you are about to change everything. He came downstairs scrolling through his phone. Any progress? Yeah, an interview at Cheek. He stopped halfway through tightening his cuff link. Already? Yes. Where? A renewable energy company in Midtown. His eyebrows rose. You got an interview at Ariel Company? So it seems. Who helped you? No one. He gave me a look that said he did not believe that, but the answer pleased him enough. Well, don't oversell yourself. They'll see through that. Just be humble, listen, and maybe they'll give you something entry level. I'll try. He kissed the side of my forehead as if rewarding. His phone buzzed. He glanced down and smiled again. Madison. I knew it from the way his eyes warmed. He left 12 minutes later, carrying the same briefcase he had thrown at my feet. The moment his car disappeared down the driveway, I walked upstairs past our bedroom, past his dressing room, past the framed wedding photo where we both looked like people auditioning for happiness. Behind a mirrored wall in the back of my closet was a biometric lock Blake had never noticed. It opened to a private room he believed was storage. It was not. Inside were my real clothes. Not the cream dresses Blake liked. Not the soft cashmere sets that made me look gentle and available. Suits from London, Milan, and New York. Shoes meant for boardrooms. Files locked in steel drawers. A monitor wall. Old photos from construction sites in Texas, turbine fields in the Dakotas, solar farms in Arizona. My first hard hat hung on the wall, scratched and sun-faded, more precious to me than any diamond Blake had ever given me with my own money. I chose a charcoal suit, a white blouse, black heels, and a plain watch. When I looked in the mirror, I did not see Blake's wife. I saw the woman who had existed before him. Whitestone Meridian's headquarters rose over Hudson Yards in a tower of glass and brushed steel. I entered through the public lobby, not the private garage, because Eleanor Hayes was not supposed to have executive access. A young receptionist with a kind smile gave me a visitor badge. Miss Hayes, talent acquisition is on the 18th floor. Thank you. I took the regular elevator with interns, analysts, assistants, and 2 engineers arguing about grid load in Texas. One of them said, whoever designed the Meridian storage model was either a genius or insane. I stared straight ahead and did not smile. The interview was with Priya Sen, our head of people, who had worked with me for 7 years and looked like she was actively fighting the urge to laugh. Miss Hayes, she said, shaking my hand. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for having me. She sat across from me in a glass conference room and opened my deliberately thin resume. I see you've had a long career. Pause. Family responsibilities. And why Whitestone Meridian? Because clean energy is not a trend. It is infrastructure. Whoever controls storage and grid flexibility over the next 20 years controls the future of power. Priya lowered her eyes to the resume, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Strong answer. I read. I hope so. After Priya, I met with 3 managers who did not know who I was. They asked about market analysis, carbon credit assumptions, project finance, and regional battery demand. I answered carefully, not too much, not too little. It was harder pretending to be less informed than I expected. Once, when a senior manager misquoted a risk model I had personally rewritten, I had to grip my pen so I would not correct him too sharply. By noon, Priya called me back in. We'd like to offer you a junior strategic analyst position. That's wonderful. The salary is $112,000. I paused, because the universe has a mean sense of humor. My husband will be relieved. Priya's expression hardened for half a second before she smoothed it out. I'm sure he will. That night, Blake came home at 8:40, later than usual and freshly showered, though he claimed he had been at the office. How did the little interview go? The little interview went well. He poured himself a drink. Did they offer you anything? Yes. Junior strategic analyst. $112,000. He stared. For one brief second, I saw something almost like respect. Then he ruined it. See? You just needed a push. I knew you were capable of something if you stopped hiding behind flowers. I folded my hands in my lap. You were right. He smiled like a king granting land. I'm proud of you. Those words should have meant something. They arrived 18 years too late, from a man proud of the wrong woman for the wrong reason. Thank you, I said. Don't let it go to your head. You're starting at the bottom. I looked at the ice melting in his glass. So I've been told. On Thursday morning, I entered the Whitestone boardroom through the private executive elevator. No visitor badge this time. The room was already full. Nadia stood near the presentation screen. Martin, my attorney, sat with a folder in front of him. The independent directors were talking quietly until I walked in. I had attended meetings for years through encrypted video, usually with the camera off or angled away. I had built an entire corporate myth around privacy. Some thought I was older. Some thought I was part of a family office. Some thought Eleanor H. Whitmore was a legal fiction representing a group of investors. That morning, I walked to the head of the table and placed both hands on the chair. "Good morning," I said. "I'm Eleanor Hayes Whitmore. Founder." It's time we stopped pretending I'm a shadow. The room went dead silent. One director dropped his pen. Another whispered, "Jesus." Nadia smiled like she had been waiting years to breathe. I spoke for 47 minutes. I explained the privacy structures, the trusts, the ownership routes, the operating roles I had hidden behind initials. I explained why I had chosen anonymity in the early years: security, leverage, gender bias, and a personal life I had stupidly believed could stay pure if my power stayed invisible. Then I explained what would happen Friday night. Daniel Carson would come to my home believing he was attending a social dinner arranged by Blake Whitmore. The acquisition documents would be present. The deal would close in principle. Blake would learn that his decorative wife owned the table, the house, the company courting Carson, and the clients keeping his consulting firm alive. A director named Howard Klein leaned back slowly. "Your husband truly has no idea?" "No. And he works at Hargrove and Wells?" "Yes. Our accounts represent more than half their revenue." 61%, Simone said. Howard looked at me. "And you want to terminate those contracts?" "Not immediately. Only after compliance review identifies replacement coverage. I don't burn companies for personal revenge." "Then what do you call Friday?" I met his eyes. "Documentation." No one argued after that. Friday arrived cold and bright, with a clean spring wind moving through the trees along the driveway. Blake was in a spectacular mood. He had spent the morning barking into his phone, trying to sound more important than he was. He inspected the dining room twice, questioned the wine choices, and told the chef to keep it elevated, not experimental, as if he had hired him. He had not. Whitestone's corporate events team had arranged everything through my household staff. The menu was American coastal with quiet luxury touches: oysters from Maine, halibut with lemon beurre blanc, spring vegetables, and a dark chocolate tart with sea salt caramel. The wines came from my cellar. The flowers came from my hands. At 6:30, I came downstairs in a deep emerald silk dress and a tailored black jacket. Blake looked up from his phone and frowned. "That's a lot." "It's a dinner." "It's my dinner. Don't compete with the room." I touched one pearl earring. "I am the room." "What?" The doorbell rang. He gave me the warning look he used in public. "Behave." First came Daniel Carson and his wife, Ruth. Daniel was tall, silver-haired, and tired in the way founders become tired when their company is brilliant but undercapitalized. Ruth had kind eyes and the posture of someone who had watched too many men underestimate her husband and planned to remember every name. Then came Nadia, introduced by me as a friend from a professional circle, which was technically true. iPhone considered building a billion-dollar company a circle. Martin arrived next. Simone. Howard Klein and his wife. Blake greeted them with practiced warmth, assuming they were donors, advisors, or wealthy acquaintances he could convert into influence. At cocktails, Blake performed. He told Daniel that Hargrove had deep relationships across energy markets. He exaggerated his role in accounts he barely understood. He corrected him twice. When Daniel asked me whether I had always lived in Connecticut, Blake answered for me. "Eleanor's mostly been focused on the home. She keeps things beautiful." Ruth looked at me. I saw her register the tension instantly. Blake put a hand on my lower back. "Possessive. Heavy. She did get a job this week, though," he announced, raising his glass. "Junior analyst at Whitestone Meridian. We're all very proud." The silence that followed was almost musical. Nadia coughed into her champagne. Martin looked at the fireplace. Howard turned away completely. Daniel's face sharpened. "At Whitestone Meridian?" he asked. "Yes," Blake said. "Funny coincidence, right? You're trying to sell to them, aren't you?" Daniel kept his eyes on me. "Something like that." Blake laughed. "Maybe my wife can put in a good word once she learns where the bathrooms are." It was such a small sentence. Not the worst thing he had ever said. Not the cruelest. But there are moments when a life breaks not because of the heaviest stone, but because the last pebble lands. I set my glass down. "Dinner is ready," I said. "And there is something we should clarify before the first course." Blake's smile froze. "Eleanor." I walked to the head off the dining table. He followed me with his eyes, confused, irritated, still confident. Everyone sat. The chandelier glowed over crystal, silver, white flowers, and the faces of people who suddenly understood they had not been invited to dinner. They had been invited to a reveal. I remained standing. "Daniel, you have been trying for months to speak with the person who can approve the acquisition of Carson Grid Systems." Blake's hand tightened around his wine glass. "That person," I said, "is me." He gave a short, embarrassed laugh. "Eleanor, Don't. I looked at him. My name is Eleanor Hayes Whitmore. I founded Whitestone Meridian 18 and final authority on the Carson acquisition. Nadia connected her tablet to the wall screen. The first slide appeared: corporate filings, trust documents, patent histories, early construction photos. A picture of Met 29 in a hard hat, standing in the Arizona desert beside the first solar field Whitestone ever financed. Blake stopped breathing normally. No, he said. The word came out small. Yes, I said. The house is mine. The cars are mine. The club membership is mine. The apartment in Tribeca is mine. The art, the wine, the dock, the donations, the vacations, the watches you wore while telling people you built this life. All of it. Ruth slowly set down her fork. Daniel stared at the screen. Blake pushed back his chair. This is insane. No, I said. This is overdue. He looked around the table, searching for someone to laugh, to object, to save him. No one did. Then I nodded to Simone. The next slide appeared. A security still of Blake and Madison Pierce entering my Tribeca building at 11:42 p.m. on a Thursday. Another image. A hotel lobby in Miami. Another. A restaurant in Napa. Then messages. Madison, when are you finally leaving her? Blake, soon. I'm giving her a deadline so she looks unreasonable when she fails. Madison, make sure she can take the house. Blake, she never paid for anything. That will be easy. The room changed temperature. Blake stood so fast his chair hit the floor. You're spying on me? Used my apartment to cheat on me. You're twisting this. I'm quoting you. His face went red. You humiliated me in front of my guests. I looked down the table. They're not your guests. Martin opened a folder and placed a document beside Blake's plate. Blake stared at it like it might explode. What is that? A choice, I said. Blake did not touch the folder. For all his arrogance, he knew the shape of danger when it wore legal paper. Daniel Carson had not moved. Ruth reached for his hand under the table. I turned to them. I apologize for the personal nature of this evening. You came here for a business conversation and were forced into my marriage. Daniel's voice was quiet. I think we came here for the truth. Then let's finish with truth. Nadia placed a second set of documents in front of Daniel. My offer is $910 million for Carson Grid Systems, that is $140 million above your last ask. Your employees stay. Your Austin lab remains open. You lead Whitestone's storage division for at least 5 years, with board observer rights and expansion capital ready within 30 days. Daniel's eyes moved over the page. His face changed. Founders know when someone has read not only their numbers, but their fear. You kept the lab, he said. I know what they built there. And the staff protections? Non-negotiable. Blake slammed his hand on the table. Are you kidding me? We're talking about our marriage. I turned back to him. No, Blake. We are talking about the history you tried to write without me. The hardworking husband. The useless wife. The affair that somehow became my fault. The divorce where you walked away with sympathy, assets, and another woman waiting in an apartment I owned. You lied to me for 6 years. Yes, I said. I hid my money. You hid your contempt. Mine protected me. Yours tried to erase me. His mouth opened, then closed. For once, he had no polished sentence. Martin slid the folder closer to him. Mr. Whitmore, he said, you should read carefully. Blake looked at Martin. Who the hell are you? My attorney, I said. Blake laughed again, but now it sounded broken. Of course. Of course you brought a lawyer to dinner. I brought several forms of clarity. He opened the folder. His eyes moved line by line. I watched the arrogance drain from him. The first section summarized the prenuptial agreement had signed 6 years earlier. Blake had barely read it then. He had been too eager to marry the quiet woman from a wealthy old family. 00:35:21 111 00:35:53 1000 He assumed the document protected him from whatever little inheritance I had. It did not. It separated all premarital property, trusts, corporate interests, residences, investment vehicles, and appreciation thereon. Every major asset in our life existed before the marriage or inside structures he had no claim to. The second section outlined a clause he had mocked when my attorneys insisted on it: misrepresentation of financial contribution. 00:35:57 1000 00:36:29 333 If either spouse falsely claimed to have funded marital lifestyle expenses that were demonstrably covered by the other spouse's separate property, the claiming spouse could be liable for reimbursement, legal fees, and damages tied to reputational harm. Blake looked up slowly. How much? Martin answered before I did. Preliminary estimate, $14.8 million. Blake's face went gray. I don't have that. I know, I said. The room was silent except for the faint sound of wind against the windows. So I'm giving you one exit. You sign the divorce without claims against my assets. You return the cars, watches, cards, club access, and property keys. You leave this house tonight. In exchange, I waive reimbursement. His voice dropped. Eleanor. It was the first time all neither said my name without ownership in it. No. Please. That word. Please. He had never used it when he corrected me in front of guests. Never used it when he rolled highsies at my opinions. Never used it when he told me I embarrassed him. Never used it when he came home smelling like another woman and asked why dinner wasn't ready. Now he found it. No, I said. You do not get tenderness because the power shifted. He gripped the folder. I can't fight this. You can. Martin nodded calmly. And you will lose. Blake's eyes snapped toward him. I continued. Whitestone Meridian and its affiliates will also begin a vendor review of Hargrove and Wells effective Monday. He froze. What? Our accounts represent 61% of your firm's annual revenue. We have tolerated poor performance because it tolerated you. That ends now. You can't do that. I can transition work away from an underperforming consultant with documented conflicts of interest. Simone has already prepared the review. Simone gave him a small smile that contained no warmth. Then my phone buzzed. Not my personal phone. The one on the table. A live call appeared in the screen. Madison Pierce. Blake saw the name and looked at me. What did you do? I sent her the same evidence. His face twisted. Why? Because your messages also show that you planned to blame her if the affair became public. You wrote that she was obsessed and that you could make HR believe she pursued you. Ruth made a sound under her breath, half disgust, half disbelief. Blake backed away from the table. You had no right. You gave me every right when you brought strangers into my life and lies into my house. The call stopped. Then came a text, visible across the screen because I want edit visible. Madison, you coward. Don't ever contact me again. Blake stared at it. That was the moment he understood he had lost not just the wife he underestimated, but the escape he had been designing. Daniel Carson signed the letter of intent before dessert. No one celebrated loudly. There was no cheering. No movie moment applause. Real power rarely needs noise. But when Daniel put down the pen, he looked at me and said, I've spent 8 months trying to get into a room with you. I looked at Blake. You were in my dining room. Ruth smiled. After the guests left, Blake remained in the living room beneath the portrait he had once told people we bought together in London. I bought it in Boston 3 years before we met. He sat with his tie undone, his face hollow, his hands limp between his knees. I stood by the fireplace. For the first time in years, the house felt like I had chosen a side. Who are you? He asked. The question was not dramatic. It was frightened. I am the woman who slept beside you while you bragged about a life she built. I am the woman who made herself quiet to see if you could love her without needing to profit from her. I am the woman you mistook for decoration because I stopped forcing you to look up. His eyes were wet now. I loved you. No, I said. You loved being taller than me. That's not fair. Neither was 6 years of being corrected in my own home. He stood, then sat again, as if his body had forgotten what authority looked like without money underneath it. I can change. I believe people can change, I said. But I will not spend the rest of my life teaching a grown man to respect a woman only after he discovers she is powerful. He covered his face with both hands. For a moment, I saw the man I had wanted him to be. Not the man he was. The possible man. The charming man. The man who had once made pancakes at midnight because I couldn't sleep. The man who kissed my shoulder in Cape Cod and told me I felt lucky. That ghost hurt worse than the villain. But ghosts are not husbands. You have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings, I said. Tonight, you leave with what fits in 2 suitcases. The rest will be packed under supervision. He looked up. Where am I supposed to go? The apartment in Tribeca is no longer available. His mouth tightened. The hotel where you met Madison probably has vacancies. That was cruel. I did not regret it. At midnight, Blake left through the front door carrying 2 suitcases. No Aston Martin. No watch. No club card. No house keys. He paused on the front steps and looked back as if the mansion might forgive him. Houses do not forgive. People do. And I was not ready. The divorce took 4 months. Blake signed after his attorney explained the math for the 6th time. If he fought, he risked debt, public filings, reputational damage, and the full discovery record of his lies. If he signed, he left with his retirement accounts, some personal savings, and the mercy of a woman he once called useless. Madison filed an HR complaint against him within 9 days. She was no innocent angel, but she was not the fool he assumed she would remain. She turned over messages showing Blake had promised her an apartment, a future, and a story where I was the unstable wife standing in their way. Hargrove and Wells lost the Whitestone accounts over 11 months, slowly enough to be legal, fast enough to be fatal. Blake went from rising partner to eternal liability. Men who once laughed at his jokes stopped inviting him to lunch. He eventually left the firm to pursue independent consulting, which in New York means no one powerful wants your badge on their elevator anymore. Whitestone Meridian announced my identity publicly 2 weeks after the Carson deal. The press called me the invisible founder. A business magazine put my face on its cover with the headline, "The Billionaire Who Built the Grid from the Shadows." I hated the headline and framed it anyway, not because I needed admiration, but because I needed proof that I would never again shrink my name to make someone else comfortable. The Carson acquisition became one of our strongest moves. We expanded storage projects across Texas, New Mexico, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Daniel stayed. Ruth became a friend. Months later, over coffee in Brooklyn, she said something I never forgot. "That night, you didn't just buy a company. You bought your own voice back." I thought about that for a long time. She was almost right. I did not buy it. I stopped renting it out. It changed the house slowly. The gym Blake used became a reading room with green velvet chairs and shelves from floor to ceiling. I sold the watches he left behind and donated the money to scholarships for women in engineering programs across rural America. I replaced the bar cart in his study with a drafting table for young founders I invited to work from the estate once a quarter. In the sunroom, I stopped arranging only perfect white flowers. I planted lavender, rosemary, wild roses, basil, lemon trees, and climbing vines that refusetto behave. I let color spill everywhere. Purple, yellow, red, green. Messy life. Unapologetic life. I returned to boardrooms without hiding behind initials. I sat across from investors who looked at me differently once they knew the truth. Some admired me. Some feared me. Some tried to flatter me in the exact tone Blake used when he wanted something. I learned to hear the difference. Every now and then, someone asked why I hid for so long. I usually gave the professional answer: privacy, strategy, security, leverage. All true, not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I wanted to know whether someone could love me. Headlines, the doors opening, the rooms going quiet when you entered. I wanted to be chosen as a woman, not as a valuation. But I chose the wrong test. A person who only loves you when you are small does not love your humanity. They love your silence. A person who needs you beneath them will call it peace when what they mean is control. One evening almost a year after Blake left, I sat alone in the sunroom during a thunderstorm. Rain moved down the glass walls in silver lines. The house smelled like lavender and wet soil. On the table in front of me was a vase of wild roses, uneven and bright. My phone buzzed with a message from Nadia. "Carson, Texas phase approved. You should be proud." I looked out at the dark lawn and thought of the woman who used to wait for angry footsteps. The woman who lowered her voice at dinner. The woman who let a man explain her own industry to her because she was afraid truth would ruin love. I do not hate her. She survived in the way she understood at the time. But I am not her anymore. I picked up one wild rose, felt the thorn catch gently against my thumb, and smiled. I am not decoration. I am not a burden. I am not the quiet wife in the corner of a room someone else claims to own. I am Eleanor Hayes Whitmore. And I will never dim myself again just so another man can feel like the brightest thing in the house.